Ah yes, Gladiator II. I appreciate I'm a little late to the party when it comes to finally doing a review, but to create a burnout full-time job and the fact it sometimes takes a while to digest a problematic film, for me Gladiator II is mostly thumbs down and continues a disturbingly cynical and lazy Hollywood trend of milking fond nostalgia for greasy profit. Gladiator II is a 2024 historical epic film directed and produced by Ridley Scott that serves as a sequel to Gladiator. Paul Mescal portrays Lucius Verus Aurelius, the exiled prince of Rome who becomes a prisoner of war and fights as a gladiator for Macrinus, played by Denzel Washington, who is a former slave plotting to overthrow the twin emperors Geta and Caracalla. Derek Jacobi and Connie Nielsen reprise their roles from the first film as Senator Gracchus and Lucilla respectively, with Mescal replacing Spencer Treat Clark as Lucius. I still strongly object to the recasting of Lucius. Spencer should have reprised his role. And frankly, any sensible cinema goer knows that Gladiator absolutely does not need a sequel of any description, and for me is as close to a perfect film, if there can ever be one. So, reluctantly accepting the commercial interest in creating a sequel, Gladiator 2 received generally positive reviews from critics, with praise for its performances, Scott's direction, set design and action, while criticism was directed at the emotional tone, similarity to its predecessor and historical inaccuracies. It has grossed $437.7 million worldwide, but Deadline Hollywood reported the film's net budget to be around $250 million, which is bonkers, so including marketing costs it will have made nearly around $100 million profit or so. So let's start off with the good stuff first, because I am feeling merciful. A big smile broke across my face when I saw the Colosseum again on the big screen, and it rekindled my experience of watching the first film in the cinema. Rome is magnificently realised again through computer effects, and I do love being part of that world. Incidentally, Amazon attempted its own Game of Rome's, get it, with their series Those Who Are About to Die on Prime, which stretches $100 million across a dozen or so episodes. The visual effects are inferior and the acting is hammy at times, but it does explore the interesting underworld of betting and politics in more detail if you are interested. Anyway, I loved being back in the Gladiator world and seeing what the original characters did next, such as Lucilla and Gracchus still plotting, etc., was fun to see. Denzel indeed steals the show as Macrinus, a scheming social climber with a desire for power. His charisma and energy is palpable, but again is a familiar retread of Proximo's character in the original. I personally burst out loud when Denzel said, "Politics suck," but maybe it was just me. The arena battles delivered, particularly the ship and the rhino sequences were very good, and the face-off against Pascal's General Acacius was suspenseful. But I'm not too sure about the baboons personally, they weren't particularly convincing CGI. Now, for the not so good, and this is where it gets a bit tangled up. Gladiator 2 is at its worst when it is aping the original, and at its best when it's doing something new. So 3/4 of Gladiator 2 is a very close deja vu retread of the events of the first film. Everything from the slave journey, the camaraderie, the dream of Rome, it's all there. Except the emotional through line in Gladiator 2 is nowhere near as strong. In the original film, Commodus ordered his Praetorian guards to kill Maximus's family out of jealousy and spite, and so Maximus sought to kill Commodus only, and to try and fulfill his beloved emperor's wishes for Rome to prosper. In Gladiator 2, Lucius just spots General Acacius during the siege where his wife Arishat is murdered, so Lucius just focuses his revenge on Acacius and then the entire Roman army, so it feels a bit vague by comparison. And after a brief Colosseum fight, Acacius surrenders to Lucius and professes his love and respect for Lucilla and Maximus. Lucius then refuses to execute Acacius, but the Praetorian Guard execute him at the Emperor's commands. So Lucius's goal is somewhat watered down and less impactful, so his arc is not as strong. I cringed when certain lines were repeated verbatim, such as "what we do in life echoes in eternity," "strength and honour." They all feel hollow, and even hearing the famous Gladiator theme was awkward at times. It is Maximus's theme, not Lucius's, and it really embodies the idea of strength and honour. Some other repeating musical themes I found quite jarring as well. For example, in the original there is a soft woodwind instrument that I quickly associated to be Commodus's eerie theme. Hearing it in Gladiator 2 left me confused, unless it perhaps represents the insidious dream of Rome, but to me it just felt out of place. The score overall was not a patch on the original, with Hans himself declining to actually return, although Harry Gregson Williams did create a reasonably distinctive theme for Macrinus. Paul Mescal is okay as Lucius, but okay doesn't really live up to Russell's intense gravitas. I did quite like the moment when Lucilla realised that it was her son after all these years, but their first face-to-face meeting was a little anticlimactic. The two mad emperors, they're enjoyable enough, but they have none of Joaquin's complex performance of childish fragility and venomous anger. But seeing that Rome has gotten even worse also kind of undermines Maximus's sacrifice. Did he really achieve anything except his own personal revenge? The death of two key characters, I'll confess that I gasped out loud when Lucilla got shot by the arrow. I was genuinely shocked that they killed her off, and poor old Gracchus getting his throat slashed open. And it does feel a bit disrespectful killing these two key characters so quickly towards the end of the film. So now in the story world, since Maximus's death, Lucilla and Gracchus are now murdered, and Rome has gotten even worse. Great. Again, it leaves a sour aftertaste when rewatching the first Gladiator now, knowing that really Rome doesn't get better and that Aurelius's dream isn't going to be realised after all. But then is that a nihilistic point the film is trying to make, that the dream is futile after all? It might be realistic, but it's not necessarily satisfying. The ending. Now, this happens very suddenly, and I'm surprised that normally reliable critics like Mark Kermode did not focus on how the whole ending hinges upon a minor character marshalling an army down a hill in time to witness Lucius and Macrinus fight. The fight, though, is well executed and suspenseful, and it's potentially where a better Part 3 could start, and I started to become less uncomfortable with the rehashing and more engaged in an original plot. I would also just like to note here that Ridley is 86 years old, an age when most people are dead, senile or in a home, so Gladiator II is quite a remarkable achievement in that regard. But his cinematographer John Matheson recently observed on the Doc Fix podcast that Ridley is allegedly becoming lazy and impatient when filming, relying on CGI to take out mics, shadows and shooting with 11 cameras. Personally, I would love 11 cameras to play with. But Matheson feels that there is less artistry and detail going into Ridley's work now, and compared to the original Gladiator, Gladiator II does feel more like a TV movie to me. And in fact, most of Ridley's sequels to his own films have been somewhat careless in story decisions too. Should Ridley respectfully retire now? I doubt he will, whatever audiences think, but has Gladiator II already squandered the financial goodwill towards the first one? So would a third film actually now flop at the box office? In September 2024, Ridley Scott revealed that he was developing a script for a third film, and that the realisation depends upon the reception for the second instalment. Titled Gladiator III, the plot was slated to follow the continuing adventures of Lucius. Likening the ending of Gladiator II to The Godfather Part 2, Ridley stated that the next movie would explore the character's realisation that he is now tasked with a continuing reputation that he does not want. Indeed, Gladiator II does leave Lucius in a very dangerous place. He is the Prince of Rome. This would be exciting to see how he navigates a job that he doesn't really want. Does an arena fight really have to feature, or could there be extended fight sequences in the streets? What will his eventual arc be? Will Lucius ultimately die too, so all three films are just one giant tragic saga? So overall, for me, Gladiator II is a thumbs down instalment and a confusing emotional experience if you revere the first film. But like I say, there might be a chance to redeem the franchise in a new direction in Gladiator III with an original Prince of Rome storyline, whilst making very, very limited callbacks to the first one. That might be a way to save Maximus's legacy. Or am I being too merciful? Thanks for watching. If you liked or learned anything, please hit subscribe so you'll see my next video, and let me know your reactions to Gladiator II below.